Undersized overachiever, the Piston leader, defied the odds, upset the divas, the Jordan molder, the bird destroyer, reality check for all the Magic believers. What are the odds he and Shy would team up on 23-19 show to speak of? The ring for the middle and the index finger. Number 11 make the world believe us. Bad boy.
Welcome to Sports Talk 2319. It's a very special day because we have an iconic and legendary guest with us today. He's a Hall of Famer, a serial entrepreneur, a philanthropist. His resume speaks for itself, but I'm still going to run it down the line. He's a 12-time NBA All-Star, back-to-back NBA champion, NBA Finals MVP, NCAA champion, NCAA All-American, 1980 Olympics, even though it was boycotted, Male Athlete of the Year, co-founder of the 2019 NBA champs Toronto Raptors, CEO of Isiah International, home of his Sherlon Champagne and Mary's Court Foundation, and more. Lastly, graduate of criminal justice at Indiana University and also receiving a master's in education for the University of California, Berkeley. In my book, Pound for Pound, the greatest basketball player to ever play the game. With no further ado, Isiah Thomas, welcome to the show.
Wow, thank you. That was a great introduction. That was awesome. Thank you.
There's not a lot of times that you get to exchange basketball dialogue with the all-time great. So I'm just excited to have you on the show. Again, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So
look, Zeke, I want to dive right into your high school days. At the grassroots level, we hear the term generational a lot. That gets thrown around a lot in today's society. And I think a lot has to do with social media. When you look at guys like Lou Alcindor, that's known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar now, Wilt Chamberlain, Tracy McGrady, who you drafted, Kevin Garnett, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, and currently Zion Williamson. But when I look at that pattern of those names, it's really strange to me that your name never came up in the generational term. So I want to take it back to 1979. I'm taking you way back, Zeke.
Okay.
We go in 1979, the Pan Am Olympic Games in Puerto Rico. And you won the MVP and a gold medal as a starting point guard there. And so kind of take me back to 1979 when you won the MVP and that gold medal.
So 79, I was in high school, and the Pan Am Games was actually in Puerto Rico, and I tried out, made the team, and consequently, I wasn't a starter on the team. Actually, I was coming off the bench. I was coming off the bench, and the starters were Ronnie Lester, Cal Macy, John Duran, and myself were the four guards.
Okay.
Cal Macy and Ronnie Lester were the starters, and I came off the bench, and we actually had a very interesting tournament over in Puerto Rico. Ended up beating Puerto Rico in the final game. And won the gold medal, was named, the outstanding player of the game. And that was quite an experience for me. And that was my first time being coached by Coach Knight.
Wow. So, and that's what I'm talking about. So for me, that starts out the name generational. I mean, as a high school senior, you're winning a gold medal and an MVP at the Pan Am Games in Puerto Rico. Like, that just speaks volumes. And it kind of takes me into my next question, Zeke. So why Indiana? Out of all the schools you could have went to, you chose Indiana and Bobby Knight. Now, everybody knows Bobby Knight isn't for everybody, okay? But you somehow chose to go there. I need to hear this answer.
I wish I could take all the credit for that decision, but my mom fell in love with Coach Knight. She fell in love with Indiana, and I wanted to stay home and go to DePaul.
Okay.
My brothers wanted me to stay home and go to DePaul. my mom thought it was best that I go away to school. And back then, it wasn't like it is now, where kids, how kids would sit down and they'll say, hey, I've made my decision to go to, such and such school. Well, my mom called the press conference and said, and I was sitting next to my mom, she goes, my son has made his decision. He's decided to go to Indiana University and play for Coach Knight. And, do we have any questions about how it went? My mom ran the show, and, it was the best decision that, one of the best decisions that she ever made for me, because it turned out to be great. Playing for Coach Knight, learned so much. And, there was only three things that he promised during his visit.
Yeah.
Promised that A, he would teach me everything that he knew about the game. B, that I would be a gentleman.
Yeah.
And C, that I would graduate from college. Now, we were dirt poor. I mean, there was the poverty line, and then there was that line below poverty where even the Census Bureau don't count you.
Yeah.
That was us. So when I was getting ready to go to college, people were offering us, different, types of money, different types of bags that they call it now.
Yeah.
And, we wanted the bag. I wanted the money. Because and there were different college coaches that would come in, and I'll never forget this one college came in and they opened up the briefcase and they said, Mrs. Thomas, there's $50,000 in here. Now, I don't know if it was $50,000 or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had never seen that much money before in our life. It could have been $100 just in $1 bills. You know what I mean? Right. And at that time we had no lights, so all our visits had to be in the daytime. There was no electricity, there was no gas, so we sitting in the house freezing, and the only thing we had in our refrigerator was a jug of water. And some of you probably will understand that jug of water that you have in the refrigerator, but it wasn't sugar water. We didn't have no sugar in it. It was just water,
Man, no sugar in it either.
And I'll never forget that my mom, when the guy opened up the briefcase, me and my brothers was like, yeah. I'll never forget my mom walking over and closing the briefcase and saying, my son is not for sale. And that was a powerful moment for me. That was a powerful moment for our family. And ended up going to Indiana University, Coach Knight, and those three things that he guaranteed, he delivered on.
Wow, that's such a touching story, and it shows the character of your mother. And the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, because you can see that in your character and how you carry yourself. Just the intellect, just understanding the vibrations of people. Just an amazing decision that you made. So let's talk about when you arrived on campus. So your freshman year, you guys go to the Sweet 16 your freshman year.
Yeah.
And then in 81, you lead them to a national title. So kind of tell me about that, because that sounds like generational to me. So how was that national championship run for you in 81?
So I'll go back to 80 first.
Okay.
And because we had just won the Pan Am Games, won the gold medal. And that year in 80, we were actually picked to win the championship again. But Mike Woodson, who was my teammate, on our team, got injured. Randy Whitman got injured. So we had a slew of injuries. But the ending of my freshman year, when we lost in the Sweet 16, I'll never forget that moment of Mike Woodson and Butch Carter taking off their jerseys as seniors for the last time. And I'll never forget it. It impacted me so, because I didn't know that was going to be the end, and it ended so abruptly. And Butch Carter and Mike Woodson, those two guys as seniors, they had meant so much to myself as a freshman, and I just never forget looking at them taking off their jersey, and I started crying, because it was like I felt like I really let them down, because we didn't win a championship.
Yeah.
And I vowed to myself that the next year I would never have that feeling again where anyone on our team that was a senior would have that feeling that Carter and Woodson had on that day. So going into 81, that was the main goal, was to win the championship. And we struggled a bit. Actually, we struggled a lot in the early part of the season.
Okay.
This was the brilliance of Coach Knight.
Bobby Knight had been here before. In 1976, here in the Spectrum, he won his first NCAA title. He compared his 76 squad with the 1981 team.
The satisfaction with this team has come through watching it grow and develop.
Two class teams, led by classy All-Americas, were ready to go. North Carolina's Al Wood and Indiana's Isiah Thomas, teammates on the 1980 U.S. Olympic team, shared a lighter moment seconds before tip-off. 15-8, combining with his namesake Isiah, the two found Turner moments later, and that narrowed the score to 20. But Isiah Thomas turned things around with his aggressive defensive play. And Indiana led 29-26. Isiah Thomas continued his All-America play, turned his second steal into another futile foot race. Indiana led 33-20.
Hey, come on, let the whole year go out there.
With 3.5 minutes to play, Isiah Thomas was simply outstanding. He put the Hoosiers up by 12, 51-39. Indiana shot a brilliant 63% in the second half. Indiana had kept its Philadelphia Magic alive with a 63-50 victory.
By the end of the season, we were the best team playing, and we were a dominant team.
So tell me about those practices with Coach Knight. I would love to be a fly on the wall to see some of those practices. So for you, how did you handle that, being the point guard, being the leader of Bobby Knight's team? Because I don't think people understand how powerful that program was at that particular time. Like, Indiana was the school at that time. So you being in the forefront of Indiana University as the point guard for Bobby Knight, how was those practices? Was he very hard on you? Did he hold you accountable? Like, run me through that.
Yes, he was very hard and definitely held us accountable. But most people think that the discipline came from him being demanding in terms of you having to do A, B, and C.
Correct.
The discipline came from him giving you great freedom.
Really?
Great freedom comes responsibility. So we never had a under out of bounds play. We never had a side out of bounds play. We never had a play. You know, he taught you how to think the game, how to be a great teammate, and understand how your teammates play, move, and interact with each other. He taught you how to communicate with each other. And then the freedom that came from that allowed you to critically think your way through the game.
Now move through the offense, and then after we make 4 or 5 passes, if you have your shot, go up and stick it in the hole, but don't take the shot on that basis. Now, come on.
So he didn't believe in patterns. Like, we never had, 22 down, 33 out, 47 hut. We never had any of that. It was just like, now what we did have strategically is, from a defensive standpoint, from my grade school to my high school, Coach Knight strategically thought the same way about pattern basketball. And when you playing against a team that runs a pattern where they don't critically think, what that said to me is that coach does not trust his players enough to critically think their way and be creative and have imagination out on the floor. So therefore, he has to give them a pattern that they need to stay in, run, move from 1, 2 to 3 to 4. And our job defensively was to disrupt that pattern. Once you disrupt that pattern, then, you start disrupting their values. And then you get into their value system, their trust, their belief, their credibility in each other, their loyalty, their respect. You break all that down. And it's easy to do when you're playing against a team that's so dictated by the pattern that they have to run.
That's something that I wouldn't have never thought of a Bobby Knight team, because the perception, right? The perception is that it was always go from A to B to B to C.
No.
But now it makes sense to me now, Zeke, because Bobby Knight recruited you, who was an instinctive point guard. So you can't turn an instinctive point guard into a go here, go there when I say. You got to so it makes sense. I feel better.
No, his reputation from a coaching standpoint was totally different than being, in his practices. Now, what he demanded from you in practices is that everything is done hard, everything is done sharp, and everything is done with intensity.
Okay.
And there's a certain amount of concentration, and not only from a concentration standpoint, but there's a certain amount of thought that needs to go into every single play, every single pass. What was the purpose behind this pass? What was the purpose behind this screen?
Yeah.
What was the purpose of not making that decision to throw it to Woodson here and throw it to Whitman? So those type of things, okay, now you had to have an explanation for why you made that decision. So he would stop you and say, why? And this is where the critical thinking came in.
Yeah.
You had to give an answer to, well, Woodson's a better shooter, but coming off on the left side, I didn't trust him as much as I trust Randy right here on the right side.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't mean it, you had to have an answer.
Now I feel so much better. So after winning that national title, you go pro. You become the second overall pick in the draft. Mark Aguirre went first. Your childhood friend went first. You went second. So was Coach Knight behind that decision? Kind of explain to me, how did that decision go? Because a lot of times you don't get those stories of my college coach was behind me, pushing me pro. A lot of college coaches don't want their kids leaving early. So I would love to hear your explanation on this.
So at that time, you had to prove hardship. Thanks to, our Detroit native, from Mississippi, Spencer Haywood.
You a D alum.
Yes, that's right. and Spencer Haywood, he was, one of the first to go to court and prove hardship so he can go into the NBA. And I was following Spencer Haywood, and I had to prove hardship. And what hardship meant is that financially, you had to prove that you were poor.
Really?
Yeah. That's you had to prove that I need to leave college to go hard. That's why they call it hardship. So you could be financially poor enough to leave college and be accepted into the NBA. So going through that process, my family and I, and then Coach Knight, at that time, had never had a player to leave Indiana University.
Right. And
I was the first one to do that under his reign. So it wasn't as fluid as it is now.
Okay.
But the blessing that I got from him wasn't like, yeah, go get him.
Okay.
The blessing was kind of like, I ain't looking. I don't want to pay no attention to this, but I just go get the money, man. Go get the money.
Okay, there we go. That's what I was looking for.
The money. I understand. Now I'm not gonna give you my full-throated blessing, but at the same time, wink, wink, nod, nod. Go get the money, and that's how it was.
Okay, so that makes sense, though. I never knew that, and I think our listeners need to understand that. Like, I just learned something about your hardship, like leaving early and what it meant. I really didn't know that it was deeply rooted like that. That's unbelievable. So you come into the league as the number 2 pick, guns blazing. You start on the All-Star team in '82. Now, Zeke, every great player has to go through some type of adversity when you get to the NBA. And the ultimate goal is the NBA championship, obviously.
Yeah.
And it seems like Larry Bird stood in your way and Magic Johnson were the 2 guys that were in your way. But before we get to that, I was in your first NBA game. I was there at Joe Louis. I was 3 years old. My dad brought me to the game.
Wow.
I don't remember it, but my dad brought me, so I know. And he told me how packed it was and how people were excited for your arrival. But before we get into that, I want to take you back to I want to speed it up to 1984 against Bernard King and his Knicks at Joe Louis Arena. That playoff series, I remember Bernard hanging 40, you scoring 16 points in 90-something seconds. Like, I mean, it was an amazing series. Kind of take me back to that, because I remember as a kid, but I just want to hear how that really went down.
So we're playing the Knicks, and I used to love to go play at Madison Square Garden.
Okay.
Not because it was Madison Square Garden, but they had a theme song that was so, and it always got, we are New York and we love basketball. You're 10 feet tall and you the New York Knicks. Basketball. And I was like, oh man, that song just used to get me so fired up. So I always loved playing there just to hear the song.
Wow.
Then Bernard King, man, he was such a great scorer that in that series, I believe Bernard King, he averaged 40 for the series.
That series, yes.
Now go back and check the numbers, because I think he averaged 40 on 23 to 24 shots. He wasn't missing. I mean, I remember one game he went 18 for 22, and I remember looking at the stat sheet and I was like, is that right? That's got to be 13 for 22. No, it was 18 for 22. I mean, every time he was touching it, he was catching it on that left box.
Yes.
We couldn't do nothing with him. And every time, my job was to come down and double.
Yeah. And
I couldn't. Rory Sparrow or Darrell Walker would throw it in.
Yeah.
And I would be halfway in between.
Yeah.
Because Sparrow and Walker, they weren't great outside shooters.
Yeah.
And I was baiting them to take the outside shot.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that I'm going to be quick enough to get back in and double team. I thought I was quick. But man, every time this dude caught it, he was catching it with one hand out of the air.
Oh,
and
man.
as I'm coming back on the double team, he's catching it, turning his body to me and looking at me and going, bam. So I couldn't get back to him. And it was always just all net. So, now I caught fire, in that series also. And I never forget playing Joe Louis that final game. It was a hot day, and I never forget, coming down the lodge, come down the lodge. I had my top down. I had a little 450 SL. And I remember that day so vividly, right?
Yep.
And I was playing Superfly. Superfly, I was jamming Superfly on there, and then right after Superfly, I would hit The Freaks Come Out at Night.
Houdini.
Yeah, Houdini. Yeah. And so now I get into the arena, and it's real hot and everything, and we're down, and I don't know what happened. You know how you go to church sometimes and you get the Holy Ghost?
Yes.
And I just remember something got inside me, and man, I was making shots. I was doing things. The crowd was going in emotion. Everything was vibing. And I remember literally coming to the bench filled with so much emotion that I'm like crying tears on the bench, but they happy tears. It's like joy. It's like I'm feeling that good where I got that much emotion coming out of me, and I'm making shots and I'm feeling good, and it's like you just crying like.
Yeah.
So it was great.
I was 6 years old, and every time it would go to commercial break, I would mimic your moves, like in between the commercial breaks.
Right.
And you had Roy Sparrow and Roy Williams was out there, Darrell Walker, like they were trying to take turns to guard you, and you was just dancing on them, getting to the basket, left, right, and one. So I remember mimicking those moves during the commercial break. So me and my dad was going crazy. That was just, I think that was when the NBA really was like, hey, man, like we have a generational player on our hands in Isiah Thomas, because, I mean, Bernard King was out there with broke fingers. I mean, it was just one of the best playoff series that I've ever seen with my own two eyes. But now, speaking of that threshold, getting through that adversity, the ultimate goal of winning the NBA title, Boston Celtics stood in your way 85, 86, 87. What was it like walking off the court in defeat? And going into the 88 season, what was your mind frame like? So what was your off season like going into the 88 season after losing to Boston? Did you just say, I ain't losing no more? Like, what was that moment for you?
No, it was an educational moment for me,
Okay.
With the Celtics and the Lakers. So
Okay.
coming into the NBA, I was fortunate enough to, Magic was a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
In the summer before I came in, he and George Gervin, we went around barnstorming, and one of our first games was at Cobo and Joe Louis that summer. And that may be the game that your dad brought you to that was my first game in Detroit.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, George Gervin hit like 12 straight bank shots.
Man.
Oh God, it was beautiful. Yeah. But anyway, so my introduction into the NBA was following Magic and Bird, watching them compete.
Yeah.
Watching them win championships, lose championships to each other, and me taking notes, trying to figure out how am I going to not only beat these guys, but how can I get our franchise in shape where we got rules, regulation, culture, voice. How are we going to present ourselves to the NBA? So my studies was really of the Boston Celtics in the Los Angeles Lakers. And so watching Bird and Magic, when Bird won, when they won their championship, I think it was 84.
Yeah.
I was in their locker room watching them celebrate, pouring the champagne. And I'll never forget, Mikhail, because Mikhail and I were on the Pan Am team together. And I'll never forget him looking up over like, what you doing in here? And I'm just like, I'm just fly on the wall. The Lakers celebration, I'm there. And fortunately enough for me, Red Auerbach, Bird, Mikhail, DJ, ML Carr,
yep.
They all gave me access to their inner workings. Jerry West, Dr. Bus, Magic, Kareem gave me access to their inner workings. So I was taking notes, learning how to win, what to do, what not to do. I was there when Magic dribbled out the shot clock and they called him Tragic Johnson. I was there when James Worthy made the inbound pass and Gerald Henderson stole it, So I remember all of those things, and so playing against Boston, I knew the type of team that we were playing against and how good they were. And I knew we wasn't ready to beat them.
Yeah.
But every year for me, I looked at it as a learning experience where I can take notes and I can get better. My team can get better, figuring out how we can beat them, what they had, what we couldn't do, what we could do, the mistakes that I was making, the mistakes that we were making. So after losing to them in 87, when I threw the ball away in Game 5, now that was a terrible moment for me. It was a high and an extreme low.
Yeah.
The high was I had just made the shot to put us up 1.
You did. I was watching. I remember.
The clutch shot to put us up 1. And then they call timeout. And then we get a stop. And then I make the mistake of the inbound pass.
Yeah.
Now, I had always been the clutch guy. Grade school, high school, college, NBA. I had never made that type of mistake, game-losing mistake, ever.
Right.
And I was the one that made the mistake. The leader of the team, the captain, the one that always came through, I was the one that was down. And I had to find a way to pick myself back up. Game 6, going back to Detroit, I am so low after that game, after losing game 5. I am so low. I don't even want to get up and go to practice.
Yeah.
I get a phone call to my house because I'm not going to practice. I'm ashamed. I'm embarrassed.
Yeah.
Way the ball. I mean, you go to
newspaper.
Yeah. And so now I get a phone call at my house, game 6. And my wife, says, somebody wants to talk to you. And I'm like, I don't want to talk to nobody. I'm all mad. I ain't going to practice. She said, I think you need to take this phone call. So I get on the phone. He says, young man, it's a terrible loss, but you got to get up and you got to keep moving. You know who that phone call was from?
Ooh.
Bill Russell.
Wow. Wow.
So when you talk about the Celtics and the Pistons, our relationships are so close and so intertwined. You don't ever hear the Pistons talk about or reference ourselves as champions without giving the Celtics credit as mentors and teachers that helped us along the way to get to where we got to. So, when we lost to them in 87, I felt that we were the better team in 87.
Yeah.
However, we still didn't know how to win. So you can be the best team, but then you got to know how to win. We didn't know how to win in 87, even though we were the best team. And that 86 team, that 86, 87 team, Lakers, Celtics, those are two of the greatest teams to ever play.
Yeah.
So we had to learn how to win, and they taught us.
Very, very powerful. And there's a lot to unpack there. Just as a winner, as a competitor, and as a student of the game, it just speaks to the type of player you were still improving yourself in the midst of the war.
Yes.
You were still studying your opponents, even though you didn't really want to do that. But you like, hey, they got something that I want. Mm-hmm. In order for me to get that, I'm going to have to study what they're doing so I can take some of that and bring it over here and sprinkle it on my teammates and myself.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
That's the true art of a real competitor, is studying the people that beat you before so it won't happen again.
Yeah.
So we move forward to 88. Mm-hmm. And 88, you dethrone the Celtics.
Yep.
You get to the finals against the Lakers. Even though you guys lose that year to the Lakers, what stood out to me, Isiah, was how great and dominant you were at 6'1". Like, my dad did a terrific job of helping me understand and appreciate greatness at that size. Like, my dad was molding me into a point guard, and he was using your story to kind of shape what I was going to try to be one day. So what helped me was, here's a 6'1" point guard battling a 6'9" point guard for 7 games. But the magnitude of it, this is what I got from it. These are the 2 greatest point guards that ever played a game, and they're battling each other for 7 games. I was able to process that at 10 years old, but even processing that today is like, we don't get that type of matchup in the finals. So my question to you, and I think all small point guards need to hear this answer that you're going to give, is how did you negate the great Magic Johnson's size when going up against him? And how did you chop down bigger guards throughout your career?
So when you're a smaller guard like ourselves, who, we're not the genetic freaks.
No.
We wasn't blessed with the size, and we wasn't blessed with the jumping gene. And what I was always taught from a very young age is how do you play the game, and how do you neutralize size and neutralize the gifted? And the one thing you got to do is take away their gifts. If a guy can jump higher than you, how do you eliminate that? If a person is taller than you, how do you eliminate those things? And you eliminate those things by really making them play basketball, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna play a ground game. So your size and your leaping ability, we're gonna negate that through our defensive schemes, and we're gonna negate that through our understanding of the angles out on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can keep you on one side of the floor, predominantly the left side, with Magic, because Magic was a predominantly right-handed dribbler.
Yeah.
And if I could take away that right hand and make him have to play left hand, but he hit harder with his right.
He could back you down, right?
Yeah, he hit you harder with his right, but you had to take the blow. But at least, right, you got him playing with his left hand and you got him moving stuff. Now, Magic had such an advantage over myself because normally a small guard, you only have 4 passing lanes. You got right shoulder, right, left. I mean, those are your 4 passing lanes. Showed the 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. But Magic had a 5th passing lane because of his size was over the top of your head. Yeah. So he had 5 passing lanes, then his size. So you always had to keep your hand in a position where you can kind of negate those things. Magic Johnson was the smartest basketball player I ever played against. Because when you brought the game down to the ground, and now you got to play chess.
Yeah.
Oh, he was a great chess player on the ground. And he had all the pieces. He had the queen in terms of Kareem, everything, right? He had 2 bishops in terms of, Worthy and Byron Scott, he had the rook. So he had all the pieces on the chessboard and he knew how to move them. And then he himself, when he needed to be a king, he could be a king and go capture his queen again. So he knew all the moves out on the floor. So trying to negate him, it was always a chess match in terms of our defensive schemes and our offensive schemes. And if ever we were in the wrong defensive scheme, he made you pay.
Make you pay.
But at the same time, whenever they were in the wrong defensive scheme, I would make him pay.
Yeah.
So the games were always back. There was never very many blowouts. It was always back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And that's how it was, the most of the time with Boston. So Boston, LA were chess matches for me, being a smaller player. Now, if I just went out there and didn't use the intellect of the game and the knowledge of the floor, then what they would be able to do is overpower me
with their gifts,
their size and their gifts. And I always found a way not to let those genetic gifts come into play when we were competing.
And it was obvious that you guys were playing a chess match just watching it on screen. The Lakers did a lot of isolations for big game James, and James we had that quick step. He would play the cat and mouse game with you. You be trying to bluff, and big game be ripping through. And he was so quick, and they throw down the cap. Y'all doubling cap, and it's just an exciting series. Even though you guys lost that 4-3, it showed the city of Detroit that the Pistons were a team that you were going to have to put up with for the next couple of years.
So let me just say this to you, Sean. Yeah. So 87 against the Celtics.
Yep.
I thought we were the better team, but we lost. We didn't know how to win. 88, if you look at all the stats, we were the better team against the Lakers, but we lost. We didn't know how to win a championship yet. So there are steps in beating the Celtics and the Lakers, right? You just wasn't going to overwhelm them with talent. You wasn't over. No, you was gonna have to bring out the big encyclopedia, right? And you were gonna have to go through the glossary. You were gonna have to go to A to Z because If you think you're just going to beat me for one half, no. You got to get through the rest of the alphabets and the rest of the letters, because we're going to make you play the whole game. And that's what you learn from the Lakers and the Celtics. You're going to play the whole game. And as a matter of fact, let me teach you how to win a series of games. So those steps were great lessons for us. And we learned from the two best teams that have probably ever played the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those two teams don't get enough credit of how dominant and how great they was from top to bottom. And basically how you explain Magic Johnson is exactly how I saw him on TV and how I visualized how he played the game, with using all his pieces, outthinking you, using his size. And then when he got in the fast break, he had some electric with him and get the crowd going. So that's always hard to overcome, but you overcame it.
As point guards, what Magic Johnson and I would always try to do is this is where the real chess game came in. It's like, can I dominate the game and only take 10 shots? Can I dominate the game and only score 6 points? But my fingerprints are all over the game.
Yeah.
Magic Johnson could beat you. And I learned this from him. He could beat you and score 6 points. But he's totally dominated the game.
Yeah. Fingerprints everywhere. Deflections, making the right decisions.
Yeah.
You know what's crazy, Zeke? Before we move on, so I was watching tape when y'all played the Lakers. It was the following year, but they used Michael Cooper to face guard you.
Yeah.
I remember this.
Yeah.
I watched the tape. And what I watched with Magic Johnson, just to add on to what you're saying, Magic was roaming because guys couldn't stay in front of you. Magic would roam and keep you out of the paint as Cooper face guarded you. Like, I noticed that. So it's something that I caught on film when I was watching a couple of days ago, how they were face guarding you.
And 6'6" and 6'9", by the way.
That's tough. That's tough to be face guarded by that. I've experienced some of that, Zeke.
I know, I've seen it. I watched you.
No, that's not easy, man. I'm trying to tell people, man. So,
but when you was in high school, I had never seen a boxing 2. I heard a boxing 1, but they had a boxing 2 on you. I was like, oh, okay, that's creative.
Yeah,
but you still was getting 30.
Yeah, they did everything under the sun to stop me in high school, man. So I felt your pain. And that's why, like, I look at that following season, you led your Pistons to the number 1 record in the league, 63-19. This is the 88-89 season. You knock off the Celtics, you knock off Michael and his Bulls, and you move to the finals and you sweep Magic and his Lakers. Okay? So let's recap that a little bit. The regular season, you guys go 63-19, which is the number 1 record in the league. And you beat Bird, you beat Jordan, you sweep Magic and his Lakers. Now, here's a hidden stat, and I don't know if you know this, Zeke, but I'm gonna put it out there. Your record against the Chicago Bulls from 1984 to 1990 is 36-17. And in 91, you had surgery on your wrist, I believe. You had surgery in 91, I believe.
Actually, my right wrist is fused. And as you can see, I can only bend it that much.
I remember that. So in 91, you had the surgery on your wrist. But prior to that, 36-17 against the Chicago Bulls. But so you win your first championship that year. What was that feeling like, sweeping the Lakers, getting your first championship, and overcoming that threshold that we talked about earlier?
It was relief. Not only was it relief and joy, but it was one of those things that you always dreamed about. And coming to Detroit, where we started at, that song, started from the bottom, now we're here. Okay, we really did start from the bottom. Yeah. And it was a build. And there were a lot of times that you didn't know if you were good enough. You didn't know if you would make it. You didn't know if your team, there were times that you would doubt. And this is where the Detroit community was so strong for me and so inspirational to me, is because whenever I had those down moments, there will always be somebody at the gas station.
Yeah.
Like, hey man, you all right? Or there's somebody at Dotnetters. I always went to Dotnetters on 6 Mile in Wyoming.
Yep.
I was like, hey man, y'all gonna be all right. Just keep pushing. And them old heads around the city.
Yep.
Always giving me knowledge. And just saying, hey, you closer than you think. You're doing the right thing. Slow down, young fella. You ain't gonna get it just now. You gotta.
Yeah.
And that helped me so much. And so when we finally won, just reminiscing and remembering all the good advice that you got, and being able to share it with the city, being able to share it with the state.
Yeah.
It was a great moment for all of us.
And it was exciting for the city. I just remember my neighborhood going crazy, and just being very triumphant, and just celebrating you guys and how you earned it, and just hearing that climb of how you got there, studying the Lakers, studying the Celtics, watching them celebrate in the locker room, just kind of seeing how it felt to be a winner.
Yeah.
And how you finally get to that pinnacle. And it's like, I want to say something before we continue. I don't want to get off script here, but I got to say this before we move forward, Zeke. It's something that's kind of bothered me for quite some time. And it recently struck a chord with me. So I just bear with me. I don't really like the narrative that has been formed about your Piston championship teams. It just seems like the people are telling the stories of the hunters, but nobody hears the story of the lion. And the history of the game, to me, is becoming distorted by the day. And and here's why I believe it's going to get worse before it gets better. The history is in the hands of people who didn't really watch it. History is in the hands of people who have agendas. And history is in the hands of those who really don't care. So they're telling stories, but they're rearranging the narrative to cater to their platforms. Now, for example, your championship teams, I've seen it all the time, get this term called dirty. And look, and I've seen this by so-called history tellers, and that narrative has been smeared across platforms, sports platforms, for so many years. The Pistons were dirty. They were dirty, this and that. And it's like, look, let me tell people the truth about your championship teams. Guys wasn't dirty. You were physical. Now, I got some stats. I want to bring up some stats before we move on, Zeke. So here's the stats of your 1988-89 championship team. You guys were second in the NBA in points allowed at 100 points a game. You guys were second in the NBA in field goal percentage defense. Okay? Those are the two main defensive statistics in order to win championships. And you were a phenomenal rebounding team. There was a lot of one shots and outs with the team you had. I got more. Hold on. I'm not done. Your 89-90 team that won the championship, you guys were first in the NBA in points allowed, giving up only around 98 points a game. And you were first in the NBA in field goal percentage defense. So that just doesn't sound like a dirty team to me. That sounds like a team that's intelligent, that know how to play defense, that understands coverages, and they're not going to bend, don't break type of mentality. So Zeke, I'm gonna put you on a spot here. I'm gonna put you on a spot. I don't care. So there's a certain defensive aura that has followed you, and I'm putting you on a spot. Wherever you go, there's this dominant defensive scheme that follows you. So I'm gonna go all the way back to your high school. So before I give you the floor, let me break it down. And if I'm wrong, please stop and correct me. Okay. So your high school team, St. Joseph, you guys were the number one defensive team in the state of Illinois, correct?
That's correct.
Chargers really want to run, but they're not getting Lockport to fall for it. Lockport will not run with them. Look at that steal by Thomas. Down to Clark, all the way again. This one he converts.
Okay. At Indiana, during your national championship run in '81, your team put on one of the best defensive clinics in tournament history by winning every game by double figures. That's just being dominant on the defensive end. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And of course, your championship Piston teams that I just ran down, the top, maybe arguably the top defensive teams ever assembled. So here's my question to you. Okay, here's my question. What's your philosophy on defense? And before you answer that, I do believe if you want to know someone, you got to dig deep into their roots. So I looked at your roots. Johnny Gage, who was your AAU coach.
Yeah.
Gene Picator, rest in peace, your high school coach. And Bobby Knight. But there's another person in those roots, Zeke, and I'm about to bring them out. There's another person in your roots. So John McClendon, God rest his soul.
You've done all your homework. Wow. You've done all your homework. Oh, man.
I'm putting it down. No, look.
You definitely tell people who he is.
So John McClendon, God rest his soul, the inventor of fast break basketball, comes from the basketball tree of Naismith.
Yes.
One of your mentors at Martin Luther King Boys Club in Chicago.
Yes.
That tree of people kind of shows your lineage and that defensive philosophy. So my question, what's your philosophy on defense? And it tells us a lot. I need to hear this.
You know, it really is. It's a simple philosophy. Pressure, defensive pressure without fouling.
Okay.
And B, forcing your opponent to take tough contested shots. And C, being a great rebounding team. And as you just referenced with all our teams, with all those stats, every team that I played on, my defensive philosophy, it really started at my roots. And it wasn't based on gambling. It wasn't based on stealing. It wasn't based on blocking shots. I was taught that if you stole the basketball or you blocked a shot, that meant that somebody had got beat defensively and you had to help them. And, you had to help, right? So you had to come over and block a shot. Now, challenging your offensive player, the player that you're defending, challenging his shot. Your job was to make him miss, period. And if I can make you miss, then I've done my job. Now, rebounding the basketball on our pro team, Lambier and Rodman, every year they were winning, they were the best rebounders in the league. Top 5 every year. In college, when you talk about, winning every game by double digits in the NC2A tournament, I don't know, maybe that's been done once or twice, and you may have to go all the way back to the UCLA days.
Yeah.
But I know during that run that we had from a dominant defensive standpoint, that was one of the most dominant defensive standpoints in NC2A history. My NBA team was one of the most dominant defensive teams in the NBA.
Yeah.
So what I was fortunate enough is to have coaches in college and also in the NBA who trusted my mental makeup from a defensive scheme standpoint.
Yes.
And so Coach Knight, Coach Daly, they would always let me have input into the defensive game plan in terms of how we scheme, what we do, how we rotate, how we double team, if we double team, when we fake double team. So all my defensive scheming came from making you think critically. I never was put on any of the top first team all defense. I don't even think I was second team all defense.
Wow.
But all these teams that I played on, got one thing in common from a defensive standpoint is that I was on those teams.
It's clear as day. It's almost like, like Deion Sanders, like that you get that shutdown cornerback and they can just change the scheme of your defense. So great defensive teams usually have great pressure from the point guard position.
You have to. And not only that, so that point guard position, right? In the NBA, now we got a shot clock.
Yeah.
So, and most NBA teams are running pattern offenses, at least at that time. So if I can take 7 to 8 seconds off in the backcourt.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you get into your offensive set, where you used to go into your third option, you only going to be able to get 2 options off against us.
And that's well broken down. And that's how we think as point guards. It's like it's broken down to a science all the way to the last second of the shot clock. So I want to move forward and talk about the 89-90 season. You guys go 59-23, the second best record in the NBA. You sweep the Pacers, you beat the Knicks, you beat Jordan and his Bulls again to advance to the NBA Finals against the Portland Trail Blazers. You win the championship 4-1. You win Finals MVP. You averaged 27 points, 7 assists, 5 rebounds. Now, before I ask you the next question, let me address this because this has been swept under the rug again. So you hear the term all the time, small ball. You hear that now in today's game. But you and Joe Dumars really are the pioneers of small ball play. You two are the only back-to-back Finals MVP winners ever.
Yes.
From the backcourt. And when you look at today's NBA, you look at like Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, Chris Paul does it with his backcourt mate, Schroeder. Like you see a lot of NBA teams running that 2-guard small front. So here's a staggering fact before we go further that nobody talks about. It's baffling to me that nobody speaks on this. Against Portland, you still hold the highest 3-point percentage record in Finals history. As a guard, you shot 68% from 3.
Yeah.
68% from 3.
Under a minute to go, 14 on the shot clock for the Pistons. Thomas will fire for a 3 and hit it. And Isiah Thomas now with 13 points in the first quarter.
And your teammate, Bill Laimbeer, set a Finals record for center shooting threes in that as well.
Yeah.
So what's baffling to me is Laimbeer has always been vilified for years.
Yeah.
And if you look at this guy, he's not a player that's just out there fouling people. He's been painted as a guy that just foul people hard. No. Bill Laimbeer was the ultimate stretch 5, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
86-83. Laimbeer is open. And he ties the game. Laimbeer fires a 3 and hits it. Pistons by 1. Laimbeer wants another 3. He's got it. 5 in the game for Bill Laimbeer.
In the Finals against Portland, he averaged 13 points and 13 rebounds. In the Finals.
Yeah.
Not he wasn't fouling people hard. He averaged 13 and 13, and he stretched the defense and knocked down long-range shots. The prototypical 5 in today's game, Bill Laimbeer was doing that. So the question I have for you is, how tough was it to repeat? And what championship was more difficult? Was it the first one or the second one, or if any?
Those are great stats and definitely, hitting the memory bank, so to speak. So I thank you for finding them. You definitely have done your research. I mean, wow. So I'll start back in terms of, the journey in terms of, because I think this is important. This is important also. So I believe 87, 86, Bird is the MVP of the league.
Okay.
87, Magic is the MVP of the league. 88, Jordan is the MVP of the league.
Okay.
89, 90, Magic is the MVP of the league. So when we were beating them, or if you want to have head-to-head competition, when I was beating them, we were playing at their absolute best, and they were the most dominant in the league during that period of time.
Facts.
So I just want to make sure that I put that on the table.
Yes, absolutely.
Second thing is, in terms of, playing that well in the finals, Joe Dumars and I being the first small guard backcourt during that period of time, no one thought that small backcourts could win NBA championships.
Right.
And you being a scoring point guard yourself, if you would put yourself back in your high school days and in your college days, it was really frowned upon for small guards to have the nerve, to be a well-rounded basketball player.
A little bit more on it.
Yeah.
A little bit more on it.
Your job as a small guard during that period of time, you're supposed to pass it to the big guy and go run and stand in the corner.
Get out the way.
And get out the way. That was your, in terms of developing your whole game, all of your skill sets, that was so frowned upon. And it was frowned upon. It was so frowned upon that they came up with another label for players like you and I, where we wasn't called pure point guards, whatever pure meant, right?
Yeah.
We didn't fit into that box. We didn't fit into that label. Now you get to Joe Dumars, myself, and Vinnie Johnson. We don't fit into no box.
Nothing.
We're not pure shooting guards, because if you remember, all the guards back that time, everybody was 6'9".
Yeah.
All the point guards were 6'7" to 6'9". Magic Johnson, Paul Pressey, Michael Ray Richardson, Reggie Theus, so forth.
Big.
All of them were big. A small point guard trying to win in the NBA during that period of time was laughed upon. A small shooting guard, Joe Dumars, at 6'2", 6'3", the closest was Andrew Toney, who, him and Joe Dumars were, I think they was drinking that Louisiana water down there because both of them came in, right? Yeah. But those were the only two. Most of your shooting guards were 6'6", 6'7", 6'5", big, right? Yeah. And Vinnie Johnson, 6'2", 6'3", and we all lied about our height.
Yeah.
Child, I don't know why. Why we lie about that extra inch? Why is it so important to us, right? It's like
it's just for the soul, Z.
I don't know why, but it's like no, I'm 6'1". Now really you're 6 feet, but it's like no, I'm 6'1". But now that I'm older, I look back and I go, why did we fight so hard for that extra inch on the stat sheet?
It don't make a damn difference, right?
It didn't. But anyway, so us as a small backcourt and the way we played, and I kind of chuckle when they say the game has evolved. I say the game has caught up to the way the Pistons played. If you go back and you're looking at Portland series, I think Lambeer set a playoff game record for a center. I think he hit 5 or 6 threes in one game. So 1990, those stats and those numbers that you just rattled off, I mean, during that season had evolved to such a level where I was so dominant, not only from the three-point line, mid-range, controlling the game. I mean, I was the best that I had ever been.
Yeah.
And you can look at my series in 90 and see how dominant of a player that I had become.
Yeah.
So that summer now I'm saying, okay, now I missed my three-peat in 88, right? So now I got a chance to get it in 91.
Yeah.
So I only took 3 to 4 days off and I had a gym in my house, and I shot every day from sun up to sundown, just working on my game, practicing hard.
Yeah.
And I basically shot my wrist out. The doctor said you only get so many bends in the wrist.
Yeah.
And going into that season, I knew something was wrong with my wrist.
Yeah.
But I didn't think it was that big a deal. So I tried to keep playing on it because we always played through pain. We never complained.
Yeah.
But I remember going to the doctor's office and sitting there, and the doctor, said to me, basically, for you as a small point guard in the NBA, this is a career-ending surgery that we're getting ready to do. And I'll never forget, I was there with my wife and Mike Abdenauer, and I was like, then it's not registering.
Yeah.
It just wasn't registering. So right after the surgery, they sent my wife and I away. We went to St. John's Island in the Virgin Islands.
Yeah.
And I had to have a cast up here, and I was in the cast for I think I was in the cast for like 3.5 months. Came out, and I wasn't supposed to play that season.
Yeah.
I came out, and whenever you're in the cast, your wrist and your
weak
atrophy is so bad.
Yeah.
Right. But again, it's like, I'm a soldier. I ain't gonna let the team down. I'm gonna come back and play. I was supposed to sit out the whole year. I came back, played in the playoffs. We got swept by the Bulls.
Yeah, I remember.
And in '91, that whole period of time, it really didn't dawn on me that I never would be the same player again until '92, until the season started, because I was in such denial.
Yeah.
And you can go back and you can look at, after the '90 finals, my decline was drastic.
Yeah.
You just got something that I've never told anybody.
Wow.
It's the first time I went through that range of emotion in terms of what I was going through with career-ending surgery in '91.
I'm glad you shared that story, because a lot of people don't know that.
I will be a Piston for my entire career. I'm also able to announce that I will be a Piston for the rest of my life.
So I just don't think you get enough credit for how competitive you are. So when you look at great small point guards, the common denominator that we all share as great small point guards is that we're ultra competitive.
Yeah.
And you look at the smaller guys like Tiny Archibald, Allen Iverson, Damon Stoudemire, who you drafted, Trae Young. You look at these smaller guys, and you have to understand what it takes to get through certain levels of the game. So here's my question. And I believe, again, you're the only point guard that can answer this question. Out of all the small point guards, you're the only one that have the answer to this. So I want to ask you this. What is it going to take for a small point guard to win multiple championships in the NBA today? And I don't count Steph Curry as a small point guard, because Steph Curry's like 6'3" and some change. Like, Steph Curry's taller than what people think.
I watching Steph Curry on television, I really thought me and him was the same size, right? and then I met him. I was like, oh, he kind of thick, and I'm like, oh, we're not the same size,
No.
But I would say right now, because of the rules, I think there will be a time where the small guard can dominate, because the rules are all set up for the small guard to do it now. When I was playing, and when you and I were playing, the rules were so stacked against the point guard, even the way they measured, right?
Yeah.
So the criteria of measurement in terms of field goal percentage, turnovers, so forth and so on, it's like, of course, I'm never going to shoot 55% from the field.
Right.
Offense, is designed for the big guy to get it, and he's shooting so close. So his stats and his numbers are always going to be better than mine. But right now, with the way offenses are designed, the small guard, as you see, his numbers are always better than the bigs.
Yeah.
Because the offensive designs and the offensive schemes. And that's really what it all comes down to. So all the rules now favor the smaller player.
Mm-hmm.
So there will be a small player that will come and do it. But when the rules favored the bigger player, it was definitely more difficult for players like you and I dominate and control the game and win championships.
And that's what I've always admired, about your game growing up and watching you lead your college team, your high school team, and the Pistons. Statistically, I believe you could have averaged more points. I believe you could have got more assists. I just think you could have loaded up on on those individual accolades. Yeah. I see that. But what came across the TV screen, though, Zeke, just watching the game as a purist, even at a young age, is that you always wanted to win at all costs. And it came across the screen like that. I love studying film. Even watching your film today, it's like you can see that you just wanted to win. It's like I'm getting on the floor here. Look, I'll fight you if you scream me too hard. I'm going to get on my teammates. It was like you just wanted to win. And that's why, in my eyes, you're the ultimate competitor, because the game wasn't designed for you to be dominant, but you still were. That takes ultra competitiveness to basically go against the actual rules of the game and still be successful. So the question I got for you is, where did that competitive nature, where does it come from?
I had to survive on the west side of Chicago. I had no food. I grew up every single day looking for a meal, waking up, trying to figure out, where am I going to get something to eat? Whose house can I go beg, get some food? What teacher might, let me get half a sandwich or something? That was my daily thought, and that's how I grew up. I didn't have clothes, even though I had 6 brothers, 2 sisters. So my brothers were older than me, but my sister and I were the same size. And even though she was older than me, so I fit her clothes. So I had to wear my sister's clothes to school every day. And that made you get good at fighting. So that not having nothing and that thirst, that hunger, I put that into my game. And from a competitive standpoint, it was like, I always played like I ain't got nothing to lose. And I'm going to try to outthink you. I'm going to try to make it difficult for you from a mental standpoint. And from a physical standpoint, I'm going to be in better shape than you. So if I can beat you physically and mentally, then I'm going to crush you.
Yeah.
Every time we play against each other, I'm going to crush you, because you may only be able to run for an hour and a half, but I'm practicing to run for 2 hours. So when you get tired at an hour and 25, I'm getting ready to destroy you, like really physically, because you don't have the stamina to keep up. And then mentally, if I can exhaust you mentally, where I'm forcing you to think your way through the game. And it's just like in a classroom. So, some people, they can sit in a classroom and after 30 minutes, their minds start drifting.
Yeah.
They can't sit there for 45 minutes and concentrate. So what I tried to make every player and every team that I played against oh no, you're going to have to concentrate for 2 hours.
2 hours straight.
Sustained concentration. And every time you make a mistake, guess what? It's going to cost you.
And that's why I say you're the ultra competitor, because to be an ultra competitor, you have to be able to go somewhere mentally that the average person can't go. And that's what I saw with you, your ability to outcompete guys, and that's why I believe that you're the greatest competitor that the NBA has ever seen, because of what you've been able to endure and what you've been able to do, even with the deck stacked against you.
The deck stacked and not genetically gifted.
Yes.
Because the deck stacked, in terms of being small and also perception, but also the genetic gifts that everyone was looking for and wanted in terms of size and jumping ability. People like us, the little guy, we were basically, we were becoming extinct in the game of basketball.
And that's a huge point. The mountain that we had to climb was way higher than the 6'6" guy that can jump and fly.
Yeah.
The mountain was bigger.
Yes.
Stakes were higher.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't understand that you have to dig so deep to get to that mountaintop, where the guy that's gifted and taller doesn't have to go that deep.
No.
So that's why I want to transition, and we're almost done here, but I want to transition to my next point. So you came up in the era where the NBA was all about team branding. The commercials were about team branding. Everything was team oriented. Your Pistons, Magic's Lakers, Bird Celtics, Bernard King's Knicks. It was all, hell, y'all even had the same shoe. They promoted y'all together with the same shoe. Remember the commercial, Converse?
Yes.
Like, you guys, they gave y'all the same exact shoe, but changed the color and made y'all share the commercial.
Yes.
Like, if that's not team branding, I don't know what it is. So, but when Michael Jordan came into the league, the NBA started to switch its branding from team-oriented to individual marketing. The commercials started to condition the world to celebrate an individual instead of a team. Yeah. And that individual was Michael Jordan. He had his own shoe. He had his own clothes. Like, the NBA started that. So it became the battle of team Pistons versus individual Jordan. And I say that to say this. The NBA was built for Magic and Bird. It was their league. But here comes this little 6'1" point guard from the west side of Chicago to disrupt that storyline. And then here comes the great Michael Jordan and his individual prowess, and you beat him too. So the problem was, Zeke, is that you was winning championships on somebody else's watch.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
and the problem with us being small, and we understand this, right? You understand this when I say it. We always think it's our watch too. Like, wait a minute. What do you mean it's his watch? I'm on watch too.
Yeah. So it kind of reminded me of me going to a mid-major school and watching the Dukes and the Michigans and the Michigan States, and here I am at University of Detroit, and I'm like, hey, I'm the best point guard in the country. Like, I don't know what y'all looking at, but I was doing that on somebody else's watch.
Yeah.
So I totally get that. So when I look at NBA teams today, Zeke, the fabric of the Detroit Pistons kind of lives in every NBA team today. When you look at two dominant ball handlers, what you guys had with you and Joe, the stretch big, Lambeer, the hybrid post, Sally, Dennis Rodman, and the side pick and rolls and the high pick and rolls. That's what the NBA is today. I'm watching the Detroit Pistons today in today's NBA offensively. I'm watching that. So this is why I believe that your voice and your presence in the NBA is more relevant and needed in today's game than it's ever been. And I believe that your game, because when you look at your generation, there's not a lot of guys from your generation and the generation before that you can take their games out of that generation and plug it into today's game and still be a superstar. It's only a few of you. You are one of the few that I can take 89 Isiah Thomas and put him in today's NBA, and he's a superstar. And the quick handle, the shifty with the ball, excellent vision, terrific defender, great scorer, but more importantly, a fantastic leader. If I put you on the Philadelphia 76ers right now, if I take 89 Isiah and drop him in the Philadelphia 76ers, the Philadelphia 76ers probably going to be three-peating. That's how relevant your game was. So here's my question. How was your game so damn futuristic?
That goes back to John McClendon, former student of Naismith, the inventor of fast break basketball, who taught us how to think and play. And what Coach McClendon would always do is bring the Harlem Globetrotters, who were in Chicago at that time, and he brought Marcus Haynes and Curly Neal over to teach me how to dribble at a very young age. And learning how to dribble, what he said, this is your driver's license out on the floor. And if you can dribble this basketball, you can go to any spot you want and make a shot. So his thinking was basically put into me in terms of playing 94 feet. You have to be able to operate in every position and every spot out on the floor. And then understanding the geometry of the floor.
Yeah.
Like Meadowlark Lemon used to go, I don't know how many people remember the Globetrotters, but if you go back and you look, Meadowlark Lemon used to go to the hash mark of every game and stand at half court and make a hook shot.
Wow. Yeah.
Every game, a hook shot from half court, right? So the geometry of the court and the physics of the game is what I was taught. So Shar, you've heard him say, hey, you got to get that man off the box. You got to get that man off the box. Why do we have to get him off the box, that low box? Well, that's the 45. They call it the 45, right? And that 45 on the box lines up with the square, right? So you got to kick him off the box so he won't be in the square, right? And then if you move that box out, you stay on that 45, right? You still lined up with the square. Well, what that square does, lining up on the 45, then it puts the defender on a 33-degree angle, right? So therefore, when you in that spot, that defensive player who's guarding you is always screwed. Here's my point. Michael Jordan in the triangle takes Byron Russell to the 45-degree angle spot.
Yep.
He gets a wide, he gets to drive right because that defensive position that Russell had to take, it basically opens the gate.
Yeah.
So now it allows him to drive right. And, Jordan, then stops. Russell slides by, knocks the shot down. When you start understanding the angles and the physics and the geometry of the game, and when you start understanding force, that's what I was taught at a very young age by Coach John McClendon. That's where my basketball understanding come from. And that's the knowledge of the game that I came to a game plan with. So if I came out to guard you, I could tell exactly where you were going to go by where you placed the ball at.
Wow.
If you placed it on your right hip, okay, well, if I jam you, then that's the only way you can go. But by the way, if I wanted to send you left and you got that ball on your right hip, you're going to have to come across your body some way.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I get a free swipe at it. That's the way I'm thinking about the game.
Thinking man's game. And that there definitely explains how futuristic your game was. There wasn't a lot of point guards that could play that style. Tiny Archibald was fantastic. There's only a few.
Yeah.
It was only a few, but you have revolutionized the point guard position. So Zeke, I personally would like to thank you for joining me at Sports Talk 2319, exchanging basketball dialogue with me. You've continued to push the game forward by sharing your intelligence and your experiences. I truly believe that today's show, with you on here, you're going to inspire the next great small point guard. And as a kid, personally, as a kid growing up in Detroit, Zeke, you were one of the reasons why I was able to climb the mountains that were placed in front of me. I was a small guard. I became a two-time All-American. I was a Naismith Award winner, all-time leading scorer at the University of Detroit. And watching you as a kid is one of the reasons why I was able to climb that mountain and still have that personal pride about myself today. So I wanted to thank you for that. And your DNA will live in every small point guard that ever picks up a ball again, Isiah. Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you. I mean, truly thank you. I'm humbled and blessed. So truly, thank you.
You're welcome.
Congratulations to you on all your success.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Isiah. Talk soon.
All right. Thanks.
Undersized overachiever, the Piston leader, defied the odds, upset the divas, the Jordan molder, the bird destroyer, reality check for all the Magic believers. What are the odds he and Shy would team up on 2319 show to speak of? The ring for the middle with the index finger. Number 11 make the world believe us. Bad boy. Zeke the great, best NBA point guard to date. Back-to-back years, Motor City cheers. Seconds on the clock, he'll seal your fate. Magician with the ball, mid-range and all. Floor general, he make the calls. To the rack strong, no matter how tall. Fall, get up, shake it off. Make the world bear witness. That one-leg game that you finished. Wanna let you know that you always got the glow. Your legacy could never be diminished. Yoda, Zeke, two of the same. Too little they claim, but giants were slain. For these two, it was deeper than fame. Detroit will forever remember the names. Bodman.